Great. Good evening. I'd like to call the regular school committee meeting to order, today being February 23rd, 2016. This meeting is being recorded by the Peabody School Committee's recording secretary, Leanna Harris. The matters listed in the agenda are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. I'd like to start off the meeting. If everybody could please rise for a moment of silence and stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have some minutes, and first is the January 12, 2016 regular school committee meeting minutes. And Mrs. Dunn, I'll turn it to you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the January 12th minutes with the amendments that have been submitted. They are two sections, and they should be, included into the minutes. So moved.
Second.
You've heard the motion by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mrs. Carpenter for approval of the January 12, 2016 minutes. Any comments on these minutes? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoffman?
No.
Mr. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Thank you. And we also have the February 9th, 2016 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to receive and approve the minutes of February 9th, 2016 regular school committee. So
Second.
moved.
Heard the motion by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Rossignol. On the motion, Mr. Hockman?
Yes, thank you. I'm just trying to find, there was one place in the minutes where I was referred to as Miss Hockman. That's okay. If we can just correct that, thank you.
We will take care of that one. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Next is approval of bills.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant A number 2964, dated February 23rd, 2016, in the amount of $624,469.66, subject to audit.
Second.
You've heard the motion by Mrs. Carpenter for approval of warrant 2964, seconded by Mr. Hockman. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
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 Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant B number 2965, dated February 23rd, 2016, in the amount of $44,797.09, subject to audit.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. You heard the motion by Mrs. Carpenter for approval of warrant 2965, seconded by Mr. Hockman. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you. Next item is continued business. Mrs. Dunn, any new update on the MSBA Higgins project?
Work is proceeding, as always. I know it sounds like I say the same thing each week, but it's a good thing to have the work proceeding the way it is. All of the work being done now is inside, and walls are being painted. The interior is being completed and is on track for the schedule that had been set forward. There are numerous meetings going on to plan for the opening of the building, to plan for the transition of people into the new building, to actually plan for the demolition of the old building, and it involves quite a lot of scheduling. So next meeting for the Higgins School Building Committee will be this Thursday at 4 p.m. at the Kiley, and that is a public meeting, and all are invited to attend.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Next item, Cop Sync 911. Any update there, Mrs. Carpenter?
Mr. Chairman, this is to be moved into executive session for security purposes.
Yep, it's a good suggestion, thank you. The RFP for after-school program, I believe we have marked up. We're going to be marking up a hearing. Actually, Mr. Rossignol, did you want to comment on that?
Yes. I know we're going to mark up a public hearing. I believe that's going to be before our next school committee meeting. I'm just wondering if we want to take this opportunity to just go through some changes that we're thinking about making, or at least I have some questions about the RFP as it's currently constituted.
Yeah, please, Mr. Rossignol. And
So with that said, on, I believe it's 2-2. Let me just try to find where we are. As far as the RFP goes, some of the wording is regarding you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering if we should revert that into the school committee as opposed to the mayor.
I believe that that should be school committee instead of mayor.
One other recommendation that I had while I was going through this is, and this is more a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the superintendent. On 6-6, when they're talking about Corey's, I know currently we have teachers fingerprinted. I didn't know if that's something that we wanted to expand to our after-school program.
The wording on the state law reads, any employee of the school system. Employee meaning anybody that receives a paycheck. So I think it would probably be a good subject for discussion, because technically
This is, right.
technically it would be a private company. So we would have to explore that.
Just a point of information, if I might. Anyone who does accept this as our after-school program would be governed under the Early Education and Department of Care. They are fingerprinted, so they would already have that done. So if that answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm wondering if they should provide feedback, just making sure that they're following through on the... And then lastly, the last paragraph where I believe it says coming... I don't have it in front of me right now, but, oh, thank you. I'll yield for other questions.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think you've mentioned this to me before, Mr. Rossignol. I think that your question is that the RFPs that are filled out by prospective candidates should come to the school committee as opposed to the superintendent.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what will happen.
Thank you. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regard to paragraph 2.2, again, Dr. Levine, I believe you were the one that you provided this to us. So you have in here a one-year agreement with the exclusive option of the school department to extend for 2 one-year periods. I would, which I like, but I would just put an unlimited number of extensions. They're at one-year intervals, so that if there is a program that is working, we have some continuity. and we just continue it. And if it's not working, we discontinue it and not offer an extension. But it takes away the need for an RFP to be issued in the fourth year. The way this reads to me now is that the full duration of this contract would be 3 years at 1-year intervals.
May I? Through the chair, because I don't want to overstep my bounds, I would ask that the school committee consider having language in there that the superintendent review this, the performance and the contract each year with a recommendation to the school committee for renewal or not, or extension or not.
Mr. Mayor, through you, that would be more acceptable, rather than having to issue an RFP, because the way this reads, I think we'd have to issue another RFP in year 4. Moving on to paragraph 3.1, which is enrollment, it's limited right now to, or the RFP is limited to those children who are or become eligible to be students to attend Peabody elementary schools. I just wonder if we can include residents as well. And what I mean by that is maybe there's a student at St. John the Baptist who's a resident of the city of Peabody that may need some after-school care and may be able to go to the Welch or Center or someplace close to where they reside for after school, and they would need to provide their own transportation. But being that this is merely a service that's being provided to parents and students, why we need to limit it to students of the school district, and for discussion purposes. I'm not saying that we, I'm just saying that may be something that is something I would like to discuss and perhaps see, but would like an opportunity to discuss that.
Through the chair. 2 issues on that. First of all, as you have stated, that would be a decision by the school committee, and I would like a vote on that if that were the case after discussion. Secondly, I'd like to see how the grant is written and the state guidelines to make sure that, and I think it probably is the case, that private and parochial school children of residents of the city could be included, but I'd like to make certain that that would be the case.
Thank you. Moving on to paragraph 4.2, the hours of operation or the schedule. Can we expand the hours to include early release days? And then my final comment on this is paragraph 17, which is the court of jurisdiction. If we could list the court of jurisdiction being Essex Superior Court. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hockman, how was it?
The way it's written now is that it would be a court of competent jurisdiction of the Commonwealth, with the choice of law being the laws of the Commonwealth. I just don't want to get into a contract with a provider who might have a principal place of business in Worcester and be subject to traveling to Worcester.
Nope, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you. One of the, on 2.2 and 2.3, and anywhere else that follows in this RFP, it was the same concerns that Mr. Rosignol had, where it says mayor. It should include or have school committee.
You trying to say something there?
Never. On 6.2, where it says the operator shall maintain with the principal the names of all program personnel, I would like to include some type of identification and ID badge that any personnel through the after-school program wear. I'm not sure if it would be correct to wear ours, but if not, they should create their own, something that's identifiable by staff and children. On 7.1, in that paragraph, there says the Peabody Public Schools agrees to supply the operator with names of families it considers may be eligible for program participation. There is another section in here that does indicate that we will send material home to help them, increase their enrollment or solicit for them. I don't think that we need to provide them with the names of families or any of their information particularly. Are you thinking about a list we're just going to hand over? Or, because my personal opinion is that the flyer going in the backpack home is enough.
Through the chair, I don't know what the reasoning is that they've requested that in the past. I'd like to ask that question of our present provider and see what impact that has on them before I answer that question, because I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, so if you could come back with that, because in my opinion, that's a sale of a list of names, basically. It's kind of soliciting, and I wouldn't be in favor of that. They're already going to get the flyers sent home in the backpacks. There is another section on page 12 under statement as to propose fee structure to be negotiated with operator under agreement. That paragraph underneath there, where it says by payment of fee to the city of Peabody, I believe that should be by payment of fee to the Peabody School Department. Page 12, under the fee structure. And just to be clear, on page 13, last paragraph, there shall be no public presentations to be made by any interested respondents at any time while the solicitation is underway. I just want to be clear that none of those presentations take place during our public hearings. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We are going to have a public hearing on March 6th prior to our regular school committee meeting. We did have an excellent response to our survey that was sent out to the parents, and we're going to take the opportunity also, if anybody else wanted to come in to provide some additional information, they have the opportunity during our public hearing on March 6th. So great. If there's any other things that pop up, obviously the school committee members can share them with us that day as well. Is it March 8th?
I think the next meeting is the next meeting March 8th?
March 8th. That's correct. Good. Make sure that's on the record. Tuesday, March 8th. And so I apologize for that. It's Tuesday, March 8th is the next regular school committee meeting. The public hearing would be prior to that regular school committee meeting that evening, Tuesday, March 8th. Thinking 6:30, public hearing, regular meeting at 7:30. And we'll publicize that, make sure that's advertised as we're required to do. Mr. Rosignol, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have a quick comment?
Just real brief. So will we have all of the language of the recommended changes prior to March 8th?
Through the chair. Yes, it would be really helpful if you guys who have made those recommended changes could just email those to me tomorrow, and I will make sure that they're all put together.
Thank you. Next item is statement
Mr.
of...
Chairman?
Oh, Mrs. Dunn?
Sorry. One other point. I know that we are going to be getting the breakdown from those surveys, that when the tally is completed, we will be getting that additional information too. So we'll be able to probably come up with some more additions if we see any need in this language of the RFP. The response was really good. I know that the number was 617 returns, which was very good. And actually, a lot of thanks goes to Marge Marcarelli for compiling all of the survey information, and any answer that could be numerically qualified on the spreadsheet has been done. What's taking the time now are many of the questions required a specific answer. For example, what school do your children attend now? Those all need to be tallied, and she is also going to give us an entire list of comments that were made on those surveys for our information, so that we can look at those as well, just to make sure that going forward, we're trying to accommodate what parents are looking for.
The magnificent Marge.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rosignol?
Sorry. On that point, do we know when we'll get a copy of that data?
This is done?
Actually, I know that Marge was trying to have it ready for tonight, and as I said, what held it up was the language questions. So it shouldn't be long. It may be tomorrow. It might be Thursday, but it's going to be this week. So I think we'll have them plenty of time to look at them and get back to the superintendent.
Okay, thank you. Next item is statement of interests for the Welch Center and Burke Schools. We all know that at the last meeting we voted to submit requests to the MSBA under their program for consideration. I am submitting these to the City Council to be received at their meeting March 10th. It'll be received, set up for committee meeting on March 24th. I believe that's, I'll confirm those dates, but I believe it's the 10th and the 24th this March for the City Council meetings. Public participation. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to come forward and speak on a topic of their choosing, the microphone is open. Yes, please come on up. Yep, right up here. Welcome. And if you could just please introduce yourself.
Maria Andrade, 12 Grant Road, Salem. Mayor Bentoncourt, Dr. Levine, Ms. Murtagh, and school committee members. I am a 5th grade teacher at Center Elementary School. And I'm here tonight because I'm very concerned that we're allowing something atrocious to happen in classrooms across the city of Peabody. Despite your 5-2 vote in favor of the MCAS, we are still giving portions of the PARCC test. We do have the ability to say no to tests that contain PARCC items, and we do need to put a stop to this really vague, ever-changing testing madness. A few weeks ago, I was given a stack of PARCC practice tests for math, and here's what I noticed. I apologize, I don't have enough copies, but if I could just send these around. So what I noticed about the math test, there are a few different things I'd like to point out. So students may be asked to write their answers in a small answer grid beneath some individual questions. This increases the errors students will make rewriting their final answers in the tiny boxes and filling in the corresponding bubble beneath each number. The directions on page 3 for using the answer grid says to print your answers starting with the first digit in the left box. They even provide a helpful picture. However, just yesterday, teachers were given this handout, which you'll find on the following page, which gives students 4 different ways they can fill in the bubble sheet. It says print your answer left justified, right justified, or in the middle, as long as there are no spaces within the digits of your answer. So which is it? Even the directions for administering PARCC questions lack consistency. Many of the problems, such as the one on page 7, are unnecessarily lengthy. This example is testing whether students can decipher word problems and add unlike fractions. Now both are 5th grade skills, but it is presented in a very confusing way. Page 8 contains a 2-part question. Students need to convert gallons to ounces and subtract multi-digit whole numbers with regrouping. That doesn't even include the computations for part B. There is no need to combine so many skills in one problem. Many multiple choice questions ask students to select more than one correct answer. Oftentimes, they are asked to select the 2 or 3 best answers. This is contrary to what students have been taught since the lower grades. Please turn to the bottom of page 12. Answer grids include a place for decimals, but not commas when writing larger numbers. Isn't correct comma placement and attention to detail that we should not overlook in math? Although Peabody students will be taking the tests that include a limited number of PARCC-type questions, what about next year? We need to not participate in this type of test. It is poorly designed. It is unproven to be effective in providing teachers with useful data, and it is overly complicated. The ambiguous instructions administrators and teachers are being given should be a red flag to all. I have spent 13 years in the classroom educating children in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades. My experience tells me that this test is inappropriate for elementary students. Tests like this will not benefit and might actually harm the well-being of the children that I'm responsible for educating. With all that you know about this test, and with the fight that you've put forth so far, I want you to know that there are many parents and teachers that agree with the measures this committee has taken in resistance to the implementation of this assessment. I hope you continue to challenge the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on their endorsement of this assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Andrade. Very well said. Thank you. Next item is superintendent's report. Come on up. Sorry about that. Please, and introduce yourself when you're
Scott
ready.
Andrade, 12 Grant Road, Salem, Massachusetts. I also want to commend you guys for what you've done so far with PARCC. I came here about 2 years ago, and I was really angry, and I was angry at you. And it took me a while to realize I shouldn't have been angry at you. I should have been angry at other people. And I'm still very angry with what's going on. And I don't have copies of this stuff, and I want to run through it really quickly, but I feel it's information that everybody should know because you are handing every one of your students PARCC tests. And it is most likely right now, I haven't got an answer back from DESE, that those tests will be graded by Pearson. Pearson, as we all know, as I was here last time, was fined $7.7 million for the way that they got their foundation money. They put it into, I should have written all this down. They put the foundation money into and used it to benefit their corporation, which is illegal. The state of New York found them guilty. They settled with the state of New York so they wouldn't continue with that lawsuit. That's one reason why we shouldn't do this. We all have heard about the international benchmarking. International benchmarking, the Common Core, when the Race to the Top came out, the first bullet point from the United States Department of Education press release said they were going to adopt internationally benchmarked standards and assessments. March 15th, 2010, Common Core website. Internationally benchmarked so that all students are prepared to succeed. 2 weeks later, March 23rd, 2010, that was removed because it was not internationally benchmarked. It was changed to informed by other top performing countries. That description goes to this date on the Common Core website. However, the new MOU that was just signed with the state of Massachusetts says we meet internationally rigorous benchmarks. And the state of Mississippi website, as of today, also claims the standards are internationally benchmarked, which is not true. The only study that was provided for international benchmarking was provided by the people that wrote the standards and the managing company of PARCC. That document is called Benchmarking for Success, and if you read this, this is not a document about international benchmarking. This is a document about changing the description of international benchmarking so that they didn't have to internationally benchmark the standards. You should read that if you haven't already, and I don't mean to insult you. There are already on the Massachusetts Department of Education website, Park embedded units into the model curriculum units. They have the test questions. They say right here that Park is not, we all have heard Common Core, Park is not a curriculum, it's just standards. Common Core are just standards, they're not curriculum. However, they have provided model curriculum units funded by the same Race to the Top funds that are on the state website right now that all have Park items embedded in them, so teachers would be inclined to use the model curriculum units, and that would drive the instruction for many towns. If you could simply go to a website and say, oh, you do this curriculum. So now, and it also has Park stuff in it, so our kids will do better on the test. I feel that that's going to take a lot of creativity out of the classroom, and I think that's something that shouldn't happen. Now this is the one that I like to sink my teeth into. This is the original Memorandum of Understanding with the United States, well, I thought it was with the United States Department of Education, and I was told that it was not. It was, the Park MOU is an agreement between states. However, that is true. However, every single amendment to the MOU has to be approved by the federal government. So in the original MOU with the Massachusetts and the Park Consortium, we had to, in the event a new governor, chief school officers were placed in a consortium state, the new governor had to affirm in writing within 5 months of taking office our recommitment to the consortium. That was also in the Race to the Top application. It was worded a little differently, but it also says within 5 months you have to provide a letter. I asked for that letter from the Department of Education, and what I received is a notice that says we do not have a letter from Governor Baker recommitting our state to the Park Consortium. That letter needed to be filed by June 9th. From June 9th to November of last year, to the vote, and they put the new MOU into effect, it is my contention that we were illegally we paid over $200,000 to Park Incorporated during the time that we shouldn't even have been in Park, because we never had this letter submitted. And then here are every single one of these amendments to the Park MOU through the United States Department of Education, saying that we have their permission to modify the MOU, even though it's supposed to be an agreement between states. I'm almost done. This is, in 2010, as you all know, we adopted the Common Core, and we said we were going to jump into the Park Consortium. This letter says, and if you go to the original Park discussion, they will tell you that, darn, I'm sorry.
It's all right, take your time.
We are going to build an assessment system only to the extent that it serves the best interests of our students and teachers. So that says we're going to be in it, but we're going to be in it only if we think that it's good, which is, okay, that was in June 14th of 2010. In September of 2010, the districts have made a commitment to the work outlined in the application. The work outlined in the application states that we will adopt the Park Consortium test in the school year of 2014-2015. That was September of 2010. January 23rd of 2012, the Board of Education meeting, this was the first time, 2012 was the first time they talked publicly about the Park Consortium at a board meeting. It had gone 2 years without talking about it at all. They had the two people from the Park Incorporated talking about it, and the first question that was asked from the parent representative was, will Park replace MCAS? Has a deal already been made? Commissioner Chester said, there is no predetermined commitment to sunset MCAS. Now, you can say that maybe, in 2 years, a couple things have changed. But what I'm saying is that even though he initially said we will serve it to the best of our intent. We will serve so it benefits us. 2 weeks after he told the parent representative that we will not replace MCAS, there's no predetermined measure, we submitted this document February 9th, 2 weeks later, to the United States Department of Education, stating on page 9, in 4 years, we will be prepared to administer this assessment in place of our current state assessments in those subjects. So I believe that this person was lied to, because it takes longer than 2 weeks to write this. And then, flash forward to now, we have been told for the past 2 years that we are on a park test drive. We are not on a park test drive because we told the federal government in 2012 that we were going to implement this test this year. And here we go. We got a little bit of park in our test, even though we voted for MCAS. That's pretty much it with that folder. The last thing I wanted to say is that all the information in support of park, the park bylaws state restrictions on activities. No substantial part of the activities of park shall be the carrying on of propaganda or otherwise attempting to influence legislation. Right here are all the documents that they've presented so far, the major documents in support of the Common Core. One written by the National Governors Association, the Chief Counsel State Officers, and the Chief, the people that wrote and manage the park test. The new opportunity to lead was presented a couple years ago. I don't know if you guys remember that one. This one was written by Pearson, the Chief Executive Marketing Officer of Pearson. Educating Students for Success. This one came out last year. This one's by the Mass Business Alliance and the Center for Assessment again. This one compares MCAS to literally the promise of park, and this is used as justification for adopting park. Just this week, new study reaffirms park as one of the nation's premier tests from the park website. 2 recently released independent studies found the park assessment to be one of the strongest systems. The 2 independent studies are right here. This one's by the Fordham Institute, and this one is by Humro. These are both paid for by Bill Gates. It says both. You got to go to page 4 on this one, I think maybe page 9 on this one. That is not an independent study. We all know that. So I'm just tired of being lied to. And you guys have done a great thing so far with what you've been doing. I really don't know what you can do to stop this test. It's going to take a lot of guts to stand up to these people and say, we're not going to do it. We're going to do MCAS. You didn't vote for park. We're not going to take park. There, on the November 17th vote, there was no mention of putting MCAS items into park items into MCAS. That came out of nowhere. That was not in the vote. It was not in the meeting minutes. Maybe it was on the video, but they usually do a pretty good job of recording the minutes. So thank you for your time, and I hope you guys keep plugging away.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Andrade.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward and speak? Please, the microphone is open. Okay, we'll move forward with Superintendent's report. Dr. Levine?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like a vote to accept $2,000 donation to the Brown School from the Funding Factory, which is run by Diane Bulger, and it's the recycling effort at the Brown School that has done such a wonderful job at that school for quite some time now.
Motion to receive and accept with gratitude.
Second.
Okay. Heard the motion by Mr. Rossignol, seconded by Mrs. Dunn. All in favor?
I bring this to you with no recommendation only because I don't know the history of it. Typically, I know that the school committee does not vote to waive custodial fees. This is a letter from the Giving Hope Foundation. I'm sure it's a wonderful effort. I'm not familiar with it, and I don't know what you've done in the past, if you have done anything in the past with this organization. But they're asking for a waiver of custodial fees, and I actually, is there a history of this? So I would turn this over to anybody that knows the history of it.
Thank you. Sure. Mr. Rossignol, please, Linda, please come on up.
I believe in the past we did waive this. I believe this is a couple of years running now. And the only thing that we cannot waive is the energy fee per our policy. But I'll turn that over to...
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with this program. I can speak very highly of it. I attended last year the event with my daughters. They had a wonderful time. It was first class all the way. Linda's doing a great job. Linda, did you want to maybe speak? I know how much you love public speaking here at with the council. But I know the money raised to the event goes directly to leukemia research, and you know, extremely important. And certainly, I'm in great support of this, as I know we all are. But Linda does a terrific job. The Giving Hope program is first rate, first class, and certainly I think we did donate last year. I know we can't. The last few years. Yeah, last few years. I know we can't do the energy fee. That's something that we just can't waive. However, I know this is a program that we've supported in the past. Mr. Rossignol?
To save Linda from publicly speaking, I'd just make the motion to waive all fees that are applicable. So moved.
Second. Second.
Thank you. You've heard the motion by Mr. Rossignol, seconded by Mr. Amico. Move forward with a vote. Roll call, please. Oh, sorry, Mr. Hockman.
Yeah, thank you. I've gotten away from explaining my vote on this each time that it comes before us, and I believe that this is a worthy cause. I've donated to it. I believe you do a great job. I just, it's an actual cost that the school district experiences contractually for custodians, and I don't believe it's my place to subsidize on behalf of city taxpayers for any event. I always vote no on these. It's nothing against you or the work that you do. I think it's wonderful. It's great. I will personally support it, just so I can explain my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Roll call vote, please.
No.
Yes.
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 Thank you. And that was a great speech. You have a letter of appreciation from me on behalf of you and myself to Kathy Walsh, one of our school nurses who did a great job in detecting a heretofore undetected medical issue for one of our students. And I just wanted to, again, publicly thank her for her great work. You have a school choice report. Once again, you have turned around what was a negative and turned it into a positive financially, and the fact that fewer kids are asking to leave the district and more kids are coming into the district. So that's a really good thing for us. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, Dr. Levine, one of my questions on the list is, we have students obviously listed from other communities coming in, but we also have several listed who are listed as being residents of Peabody. Can you explain that part of the report? If you look at the Higgins, for example, it's about page 3, we have two on that page listed from Peabody, and I don't understand why they're included. And then it happens further down in that report on the next few pages as well.
I can only think that one of the family members may live in Peabody, but I will check that out for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Mrs. Carpenter, then Mr. Hockman.
Thank you. Reviewing this list, I noticed that there were about 27 school choice children coming in for the Higgins. I would just like to review the process of school choice, and my concern is with the Higgins opening up next year, how we are going to control what I feel might be a large amount of school choice parents opting to bring their kids to our beautiful new Higgins School?
School choice, the process will open very shortly with parents filling out a form that goes through Mary Ellen to my office, and I review all school choice requests. I check with the principal of the building to check with, to see what we feel will be class sizes, class size issues. We make certain that we take care of our kids first. We know that we will be funding through the budget, if you approve, a new cluster at the middle school because we have the students. You'll hear that during budget presentations. So we'll be very careful about school choice requests and looking at all class sizes throughout the building. Todd will be an intricate part of that discussion. What will concern me will be folks who may attempt to go to the middle school because of the beauty of the building and the terrific technology and other wonderfully modern items that will be in that building, who quite frankly don't live in Peabody. And we're going to have to redouble our efforts to make certain that the students that attend all Peabody public schools, and particularly the middle school, live in the city of Peabody. So that will be an issue that I think we have to pay a great deal of attention to. Through the school choice request, at least we know who's requesting, where they live, and whether or not, and we accept them is our decision. But when you build a new school, especially a big middle school, which is a very tough age group, people do tend to try to, if they can't move into the city, try to get their kids into that building, and we have to pay attention to that.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you've already envisioned exactly what it is that I'm talking about, because I think that's going to happen both ways, through the school choice and through illegally trying to attend the Higgins Middle School. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the superintendent. Dr. Levine, a couple of questions. In the grade levels, there's a designation for KF. Is that kindergarten?
Yeah.
And then there's a designation for PK, that's preschool.
Yep.
And I just have some concerns with the elementary, the placement of some of the elementary students in school choice. Not necessarily impacting class size, because I think this committee and the administration has done a terrific job in keeping an eye on class size and keeping that particularly low, especially if we consider it in the region. But I do notice that many of the students who are coming here on school choice for elementary schools are in schools that are already significantly crowded. And I know that the redistricting subcommittee had a preliminary finding that there were buildings that had significantly more students than other buildings. And I notice in this report, and thank you for producing it, that several of those buildings are receiving the lion's share of school choice students. And I just ask, and I think we're going to take up school choice as a vote. I think we're required to by May 1, and we'll do it again. I would ask the administration if they can be cognizant of, if you're not already, of those buildings that are already heavily populated.
Through the chair, actually, you raise a very good point. There are some grade 1s that we're concerned about moving forward to grade 2. And I'm going to take a look at how many school choices there are in that, and not that we can do anything about that now, but we do need to be very, very careful about the future moving forward, and be, I think, a little more hesitant to accept students in those grade levels in those schools. You'll notice that we have quite a few Lynn students who have requested school choice, and the natural placement would be border schools and that would be the Carroll, the Welch, the Brown. So we need to be careful of those, that influx, and I absolutely will be.
Thank you. Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the superintendent. Dr. Levine, I will be honest with you. This question came up last night after the Parent Advisory Board member, a parent, asked me about this. When students enroll in our schools, typically we'll go with the kindergarten process. Everyone has to show proof of residence. And if someone comes in during the year to our system, of course they show, proof of residence. Is there any reason why a blanket proof of residence could not take place, for example, at the 3rd grade or with the 5th grade throughout our system? Is there a legal reason that we could not do that, or would that be a possibility if it would be helpful? What they were talking about is people who, we have these people who've done it right. They apply, they go through the school choice process, and they're here legitimately in our district. The concern was people who are not residents of Peabody and are kind of, truthfully not entitled to stay in the district. Is that something we could do, or is it something you could think about?
I think it would be, through the chair, I think it would be an unnecessary intrusion to do that. We do get word when folks know when people don't live here and their kids come to school here. There are a whole bunch of ways. Usually it's by transportation. And we do get word, and we then act on that. So I don't think we have to go to the extent that you might suggest. We do get word, and we periodically throughout the year take action when we are convinced that somebody doesn't live here. Now, there are different circumstances that drive those decisions, and ultimately we have kids, sometimes little kids, that are in the middle of bad adult decisions. So we take a lot of care before we make decisions like that. But generally speaking, we eventually find out, and we don't need to disturb the great majority of people who really do live in Peabody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Rosignol?
At the elementary school level, you have control over what schools you can assign school choice students to, correct?
Actually, yeah, we have control over, yes, the answer to that is yes.
Once, through the chair, once somebody comes in at one school, could you modify the school choice to a different school, a different elementary school?
Through the chair. I think not, and there would be two reasons for that. I think it would be, we would be treating, by law, we're supposed to treat the school choice person once we accept them like our own, and we wouldn't do that to our own person, to our own child. The second reason would be it wouldn't be good for any child to bounce them around.
My fear with some of the students in a heavily populated school, if you have students move in to that district, is there a chance that that student that just moved in, because let's say 3rd grade at the center school is max capacity, you would then have to send that student to a different school, correct?
That's a very interesting question, Mr. Rosignol. We would actually have to look at open enrollment students in a particular grade level.
Right. So basically, we're doing to our own students what
Who are not school choice.
To school choice students.
That's a possibility. It hasn't happened. There's a possibility that it could happen.
So just for the future, the one thing that I'd be very concerned with is the schools that already, as Mr. Hockman and other members have already said, schools that are already kind of overcrowded or coming close to our max, because as Mr. Hockman pointed out, I do think we do a good job making sure that we keep a small amount of students in front of a teacher because that maximizes learning. I just want to make sure that we maintain that so that somebody doing open enrollment or somebody moving into the district isn't the one that we're ending up hurting in the long run.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm appreciative of this information being compiled and presented to us. I see this as a very positive development for us. I mean, a few years ago, I think we had 8 students that we had brought in, and now we're up to 113, and a large number from Lynn, Salem. However, there's 11 from Danvers, 8 from Beverly. We have students from North Reading, Stoneham, Linfield, a few from Middleton. And I certainly see this as indication that we're moving in a good direction and that our system is looked at in a positive way by many. So I thought this report was excellent, and I do think that the questions that were brought up are things that need to be continued to be worked on, because I do think our system is going in an upward direction. I think others are going to be looking to the city, particularly with the new middle school. So, but I see this as a very positive development for us, and something I think we should look at with some pride. So I'm glad to have this report. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome, Mr. Mayor. You asked for a report on the the SAC caseload, our student adjustment counselors. If there are any questions on that?
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes, actually, in the body of the report, Mr. Verbitz has said we have 7 full-time equivalent school adjustment counselors, but when I went through the list, we have 5. And I was just wondering, do we need 7? Are we okay with 5? I mean, obviously, we've got 5 and they're scheduled now, but, you know, in looking through the actual numbers on the report, it did confuse me as to what, you know, what we have going forward. When I had requested the information, it was really in line with what we had heard from our school health center, just to see if there is, not to see if there's overlap, but to see what the true full need is of the district, because we have often heard that we do need more school adjustment counselors. So it's something that it did confuse me, so I don't know if it was just a typo or if something just didn't connect in the report.
And of course, this is the one meeting that Mr. Verbitz isn't here for. Oh, he is here. So could you address that issue? Yeah. Do you have the report?
So currently across the district, we do actually have 7 full-time school adjustment counselors. I apologize, I just misspoke. We have 5 full-time school adjustment counselors. That is a misprint in the report. I apologize. We have 7 total school adjustment counselors. So
Okay,
that
thank you.
clarifies that that was a misprint. It should have said 5 1.0.
Okay, thank you very much.
To respond to your question, though, I do think that we are staffed appropriately. However, we do have a growing need to support kids socially, emotionally. I talked to special ed directors in other school districts on the North Shore. It's the #1 growing issue in most school districts is the mental health needs of kids. And for a lot of us, if we can provide good quality school adjustment counseling services in our buildings, we're actually able to sustain children's placements in their local school, perhaps even in less restrictive environments, and potentially avoid IEP decisions of having to send kids to a more restrictive type of educational program.
Through the chair, I agree with you, Mr. Verbitz. I think that having the school adjustment counselors is a preventative medicine for so many people, and it really is important in this day and age. The pressures on the students they really are overwhelming for a lot of the students, and we're talking about giving them strategies so that they can make it through the school, but also these are strategies for life, and especially in light of the problems with with addiction, it starts from within, and we need to be able to support the kids to make them strong enough to be able to grow properly and to make sure that they're able to survive in this world. So I think the work that the school adjustment counselors do is incredible, and I'm really glad it's almost supplemented at the high school level. And what I was wondering, like looking at the numbers of how many students are treated, and I know the health clinic will come forward with more data. They did tell us we'd have more, but it's something that I think we really do need to stay aware of and look at it to make sure that we are helping as many students as possible. So I thank you for the information.
I'd just like to thank you for bringing this to, your fellow school committee members' attention. And this is a serious concern at a lot of school districts. It's, unfortunately, we live in a very stressful world. It's getting more stressful. And we have kids we're really seeing an increase in the number of children who are dealing with the fallout of that stress. They're coming from homes that are stressful, homes that have challenges. So I appreciate that you asked for this report and are supporting school adjustment counseling services in the buildings.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Rivets. Thank you. Mr. Rossignol?
Through the chair, please. I just have two questions. Next to each staff member's name, it says 1 FTE. Is that 1 FTE? Explain that to me.
So, 1.0 is a full-time FTE. So that means that next to each person, it indicates if they're a full-time or if they're less than full-time.
So that person is full-time, but there's not necessarily a full-time SAC at, let's say, the Brown School.
Correct. That's why you'll see in the report, you'll see people who are listed. Several of our elementary school SACs support more than one school.
Okay. And lastly, how do you differentiate where a SAC shares their time?
That decision is made every year based upon caseloads and the needs of each of the building. So what I try to do in terms of looking at our resources, there are times when I have had to make some decisions around making some adjustments in our school adjustment counselors' positions and assignments to make sure that we're providing good quality coverage in the buildings.
Last question. Looking at the numbers, on average, there's between 20 and 30 students being serviced by a SAC until you hit the Higgins and the high school. Now the high school, as Ms. Dunn pointed out, you have a little bit of a support system now with the health center and with the nurses. At the Higgins, I'm fearful that one SAC may not be enough when you're talking about 53 students needing one person service. That just, I'll leave that up to you whether that's a sufficient number for one person to handle or whether you think there may be a need come budget time in that area.
So I don't want to speak out of turn. I actually did make a recommendation in the budget building process, and I don't want to speak for the superintendent. I think he'll be sharing that with you at some point.
Okay, thank you.
I have another.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for coming tonight. I just have a question regarding the number of students that are serviced and the history and the accounting of that. The students that receive services, do you know if these numbers have steadily increased? Have they changed? How has it gone? And how do you record which students get these services? Is this through an IEP? It is through the
Correct.
IEP. Okay, could you just tell me what the trend kind of has been?
I think it actually is increasing across the district. It's increasing in certain buildings a little bit more rapidly than other buildings. Some of our downtown elementary schools are seeing a definite increase in the number of children that need social emotional support and direct counseling services. Unfortunately, Ms. Carpenter, I'm not able to talk to you about sort of the history because I haven't been in the district long enough to sort of know if this is pretty much consistent with previous years, or is this, my inclination is that this is actually slowly increasing. I think this is an increase from last year. I actually had to make some adjustments in terms of school adjustment counselors. I didn't feel we had adequate school adjustment counseling support services at the elementary school going into this year, so I had to move one of the school adjustment counselors so I could add another school adjustment counselor at the elementary school level. I'm sorry, I'm not able to sort of speak historically.
That's okay. My other question is, do they only see a child if it's on their IEP because it's social emotional? Do they see any students at any time if there's a social emotional issue?
The school adjustment counselors, you know, depending again if they're in the building, how often they're in each of the buildings, or if they're full-time in the building. Certainly they are obligated to provide the services per a student's IEP. So whatever the service delivery grid of the IEP indicates is what they have to provide. Do they see other students on an as-needed basis? Yeah, I think they're there. I think they're a support system if they're in the building. They're not going to say, no, I'm sorry, this is, you're going to have to go see the guidance counselor. I think they're there to support kids. You know, they're there to support kids. So if it becomes something that's a need that's more frequent, I think that they would be probably speaking to the principal and to the instructional support team, you know, to sort of say if this child is not a special ed student yet, should this student be referred for consideration?
Thank you for that.
We do have children who are on IEPs for related service only, meaning they would be only on an IEP for counseling services or social skills training.
Thank you for that information. I appreciate it.
Mr. Hockman?
Just quickly, Mr. Verbitz, we do have one full-time guidance counselor in each building, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, so for support for kids that may need services that aren't on IEPs. So I thought that's what we budgeted. I want to make sure of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ribitz, for being here. But he's here every meeting. He has been. He's here every meeting. Yeah, I think we should look at his streak. Dr. Levine, I know you have a couple more items.
You have in your packet a NESDEC enrollment report, their projections, but they project us to be pretty steady over a fairly long period of time. Any questions on that?
Yes, Mr. Hockman?
Just quickly, I do see that the report is dated January 27 of 16, and we are a member of NESDEC. We pay a subscription
Yes.
fee. Was this report compiled as part of that subscription, or
Yes.
was there an additional fee?
No, that's part of a, if we did not belong to NESDEC, we would not receive this enrollment projection.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And
Question on that.
Mrs. Carpenter on that
I
topic?
apologize.
Thank you. We belong to NESDEC, and just historically, I remember we had hired them to do a really large report for us about enrollment figures and where the trends were going. So when I saw this, I thought, oh, is this like the old report? So are you telling me that in addition to what we hired them for, whatever it was, 5 or 6 years ago, we also belong to them and pay a monthly subscription to keep getting these reports?
That is correct.
Do they supply anything else to us?
We get NESDEC bulletins. They're a professional development organization. They provide a lot of professional development at significantly reduced rates for members. It's good professional development. They're also an organization that would be in competition to do your superintendent's search if you decided to hire an outside group. It is an organization of retired superintendents that highly qualified, very good superintendents. The person who runs NESDEC is Art Betancourt. He's been a a good friend for a long, long period of time, highly qualified person, was a longtime superintendent in the western part of the state, southwestern part of the state. So the organization has provided support and professional development for many years, and it is a New England organization.
Okay, just to back up a little bit, if we use them for any of the other services you listed, like the superintendent search, is that an additional fee or is that included in?
That would be an additional fee.
Additional fee.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On this, Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be honest, in line with my colleagues, my first reaction when I saw this was, how much did we pay for this? So I'm glad it didn't cost us anything extra. It's helpful, but most of the information is off the DESE website
Absolutely.
anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm very glad to hear that we didn't have to pay anything extra because
Free of
we had
charge.
paid so much before.
Much like me.
For the targeted report. So, okay, all right.
Thank you. Mr. Hockman?
I just wanted to Ms. Carpenter and Ms. Dunn's point about the prior report that we did pay for, I think it was 2009 or 10, through the planning committee at that time. We did get it through NESDEC. I was a member of that committee, that subcommittee, and we did get it through NESDEC because they provided that report at a drastically reduced rate compared to other providers. So we did pay additional fees than our subscription fee, but it was the report that we got, that in-depth report that we received, would have cost us far more from other organizations.
And through the chair, the last communication from me was an article on MCAS and PARC. There are numerous articles coming out on the issue of PARC, its lack of not only its lack of being genuine, but its lack of grace. It was spoken to very well by Mr. and Mrs. Andrade tonight. The article, I believe I sent you an article by a colleague of mine from the middle of the state, a director of curriculum and instruction, who gave you examples of the types of questions that are asked at inappropriate levels of grade levels, adding to the anxiety of kids who are taking this test and being asked questions that are assuming that they have skills that they have not. They not only don't they have, but they haven't been taught. They shouldn't be expected to have. It is the major issue with PARC. The reason I asked you to vote for it in the past is because I know it's coming. Maria and her husband are absolutely right. They're stuffing some PARC questions into MCAS now, and you know that in 2 years, MCAS 2.0 will look more like PARC than MCAS. That is a fact of life unless something happens that changes that. That being said, you have the article. I will continue to supply you with articles that come out on the subject so that you have a broad exposure to what people are writing, especially people in my field that do a lot more research on this than I do. There are people that spend a great deal of time on this subject, as both Mrs. Andrade and her husband do, and gives you a broad perspective. Any questions on that?
Good, thank you. We got questions on that? All right, Mrs. Dunn, then Mr. Rose. Oh, Mr. Rosengall first? Okay.
Just on a related topic, above that is charter school reform, and I know the governor has already made statements stating that he wants to expand and take the cap off of charter schools, so that's another issue just to be aware of in the future.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question concerning the PARC exam, and if I may, I'd like to ask a question to the superintendent or the assistant superintendent. I actually have heard from a couple of other teachers, in addition to hearing Mrs. Andrade this evening, the materials that the teachers are presenting to the students that are PARC-like, where do those come from in our curriculum? Does the state send this out in preparation for the MCAS preparation?
Most of the information comes right from the website. There's a PARC online .com. We do that, and there's a lot of information on the DESE website. But no, they do not send. We research it. We do it ourselves from the websites.
Oh, okay, because one of the things that they were explaining to me is how, in their opinion, how confusing, and actually seeing a concrete example that we received tonight, now I can actually see what they were talking about. That this test seems designed to trick the students. And the examples that I was being given, over the telephone, to me, they were trick questions. And I look at these questions that we were given, and they appear to be the same. And I know that with MCAS, it had a rocky beginning too. It really did. I remember hearing from teachers back then. I remember learning about, how a test should be formulated. My frustration as a layperson is understanding that we have teachers who spend their entire career learning so that they can teach. They have learned child development. They have learned how to create a test. It's not as easy as we all think. That there are very valid decisions that go into preparing a test so that it's a valid test. And at the beginning, the MCAS exam was not valid. It was designed to fail people, and it was designed to trick children. And it was fascinating to hear what teachers explained to me about how you actually need to create a test. Everything from font size to the layout of an exam. And they spoke up. They had to fight for several years to get that straightened out. It frustrates me now to know that from on high, the Department of Education is ignoring the very people who have been training their whole life to prepare to evaluate our students. And to understand, and having lived through it, to see what happens to the students who cannot succeed when the test has been designed to fail them. I've never seen a story yet about what happened to the students at the very beginning when MCAS became a graduation requirement. And many of those students did not get a diploma, they got a certificate of attainment. There's never been any follow-up about what happened to those people when they became adults. But at the time, they were looking at a rocky future, and they were branded. They were branded that they couldn't pass a test that had been designed to fail the majority of kids. And I feel like we're going into another total cycle of that. And it really, really infuriates me that people who should be protecting children are committing this, I don't even know what to call it, but they're committing this injustice against the very kids. If they want to test the kids to see what they know, then they can do it the right way. People go through school for 4 years to get a degree in how to write a test. And I've seen no evidence of that with any information about Pearson. The person who has been put in charge of the Park Commission is not even an educator. That right there is a huge, huge alarm, that you would have someone in charge of something so important where someone's future actually rests on this. And it isn't just the student's future. It's the entire future of our teaching staff and our system. It's being designed to fail. They haven't learned yet how to make a valid assessment. And I just can't understand it.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Did you want to comment?
I apologize for taking up some time, but I do want to comment on this. In 1993, I was Maria Andrade. Only my rails were against MCAS and the fact that we were implementing a high school graduation requirement test. Just to give you some perspective, for those of you who don't have the perspective, this whole thing started in 1984 with a national white paper called A Nation at Risk, which basically said that the public schools in the United States were not doing the job. Fast forward a few years to a lawsuit in the state of Massachusetts called Brockton v. Driscoll, where Dave Driscoll, the Commissioner of Education, was sued by a group of students in the city of Brockton because there was a claim that, and it was a true claim, that the financial system that guided Chapter 70 monies in the state of Massachusetts was illegal. And it was illegal because cities, poor cities, were not given enough of the pie in order to help them uplift their urban education system. In the years between that lawsuit and the settlement of that lawsuit in 1995, some very visionary legislators crafted the Education Reform Act of 1993, giving us what basically we have today, the framework for what we have today. In 1995, those kids who were long gone from Brockton High School won that lawsuit. But the court looked at the Education Reform Act of 1993 and said, the legislature has done a good job in crafting a new law. Let's see how it all works out. Part of that law was a standardized testing system, MCAS. All standardized tests have the same history when implemented nationally. They are designed so that the lowest scores that will ever be on those tests are in the first year of implementation. Because if the test scores were high, there wouldn't be any reason for them. So the people who design the tests and the politicians who say we'll infuse more money into the educational system, but you have to have accountability, need to be able to say, look at how poor the scores are. See, we told you so. That's the nature of standardized testing. And for 7 to 10 years, the scores on standardized tests have the same history nationwide. The test scores go up until they reach a point where they really can't go up much anymore. So they change the test. And that's what we're doing now. And that's why MCAS has basically, the juice has been squeezed out of the fruit. MCAS is a good test. But since we know what we're doing so well, and the kids are so used to the test and the structure of the test, and the teachers are so used to teaching around the structure and the questions of that test, and the kids have scored so well on the test, we are #1 in the country, it's time to change the test. Hence, Park. So, what you will have if we morph to Park is a very, very difficult, complex test that will drop our scores once again so people can say, see, we told you so. And the cycle will begin again. That's the way it is. Thank you. I'm done.
Anything further from the superintendent's report?
No, I'm done. Thank you. I'm sorry, one more thing. I invite everybody on behalf of the Higgins PTO to an event on Friday, February 26th at 10 o'clock. It runs from 10 to 1, where there'll be constant presentations going on around technology at the Higgins Middle School, in the Cullen Library at the Higgins Middle School. We invite you all to drop in and see a whole variety of different presentations. I think Jared is kind of coordinating this. Is Jared coordinating this, or is the PTO?
Mr. Haas, the PTO.
Yeah, okay, so Jared Haas is coordinating this, and we would love you to see what's happening there. And I thank Mr. Haas for all the hard work that he puts in regarding technology presentations and bringing so many people on board to see how technology is being used at the Higgins Middle School. He's a wonderful and terrific resource for our school system. Thank you, Mr. Haas, and thank you, Higgins PTO, for helping sponsor this. I'm done now.
Next, we'll move on to subcommittee reports. Educational Subcommittee.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to report that I, along with Mr. Rosignol and Ms. Dunn, were able to attend the George Peabody Essay Award Ceremony earlier today, and I just want to announce publicly the winner and the two runner-ups and a couple of honorable mention recipients. The first place winner for the contest was Gwen Schroeder. She attends St. John the Baptist School. Second place winner was Benjamin Almeida. He attends the Center School. Third place winner was Michael Waugh of the West Memorial Elementary School. And two honorable mentions were Brett Fife of the McCarthy Elementary School and Rosalie Tavernice, I apologize, Rosalie, of the South Memorial School.
Finance Subcommittee.
Thank you. The Finance Subcommittee is in active negotiations with several of the units, and I would like to turn it over to Mr. Hockman regarding Unit A.
Thank you. I appreciate the courtesy, Ms. Carpenter. I am pleased to report that the Peabody School Committee and the Peabody Federation of Teachers, Local 1289, have reached an agreement subject to ratification. That memorandum of agreement is contained in the agenda that was provided to the committee today. I'm happy to go over it if anybody wants. If not, I would move to ratify the memorandum of agreement that is presented.
Second.
You heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mrs. Carpenter. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Great news. Thank you.
If Mr. Rosignol wishes to vote, I think Mr. Amico can take the chair and Mr. Rosignol can express his desire.
So no, I'll renounce the seat to Mr. Amico so I can vote yes.
I yield back to Ms. Carpenter.
That's all we have to report.
Well, you're next on the agenda anyways with School Safety Subcommittee.
I will be scheduling a safety subcommittee meeting shortly. I know we have something that's in there regarding lockdowns. I apologize, I've been trying to identify a location. I was going to move it to City Hall, but I think that has changed. So I will be identifying a location and contacting committee members shortly.
Nothing to report currently on athletics and wellness. I will be also setting a meeting forthwith. Quality and standards, Ms. Dunn.
Nothing to report at this time.
Liaison to the City Council and Advisory, Ms. Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two subcommittees from that subcommittee to report on. The first would be the Parent Advisory Board. Our monthly meeting was held last night, Monday evening, at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School cafeteria. We had a full attendance at that meeting. And the topics that were discussed first were the Essex Vocational Technical School presentation, which will occur Thursday evening here with the City Council. We explained to the parents what was going on as far as questions that the City Councilors may be asking, how it's a budgetary concerns. And then we spoke of the vocational offerings at PVMHS. And for many of them, it was new information that they were not aware of. So it was very, very well received. We also discussed the parent survey and the public hearing that will take place at our March school committee meeting. That's concerning the after-school programming, and the parents were very pleased with that return. I know I said it earlier, but the number of surveys that came back was 617, so they too are anxious to find out what the results were of that survey. We also discussed PTO meetings at the schools and their elections and the timing and bylaws concerning that. And our next meeting is going to take place March 22nd, 21st. Thanks, Mr. Amico. And the location will be determined. We're trying to go around to the different schools so that they can visit them. And it seemed to be very, very nice that many parents at this meeting had never made it past the gym at the high school. So unless they were graduates of Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, they were very impressed and very pleased with how the rest of the school looked. So it was a nice meeting. It was very interesting for all of us. Thank you. The second point that I will bring up is that I am in the process of setting up a meeting through Councilor McGinn for the subcommittee with the City Council on their liaison with school committee concerning the voting in the schools. And we have not set a date for that yet, but that's in process. So, and that's all. Thank you.
Just one question, Ms. Dunn. Do you know who the representatives from the City Council are?
Actually, right now, I am not completely sure, but I believe it's Mrs. Manning Martin and Mr. Gravel. But I'm working off an old list. That's why I'm going through Councilor McGinn, President of Council.
Thank you. Building and ground, that's the mayor's chair, so we'll hold that. Items for the next agenda will be handled in the regular course of business.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.